looking good, Italian Job.
I would love to say I'm feeling good, but I guess tis the season for allergies or something. I've got some little frog in the throat, so if you see me kind of go on mute a little bit to cough into my hand or into my sleeve, that's what's I mean, I feel good. I just sound like I got hit by a truck. But, tis the season. How are you doing, man? It's been a while.
Yeah, I'm getting over, I think, what you're dealing with now. I went on a great trip this weekend. We'll talk about that in a moment. Went to the urgent care, on Monday, and she's looking at my chart and hearing what I'm complaining about. She says, "Are you married?" I said, "Yeah, I am." She goes, "It figures. You're acting like a dumb husband. Why did you wait this long to come see me over what is now a sinus infection that could have been, a couple days worth of pills? Now I'm giving you a whole litany of things to take."
I mean, TB, it's only been, 3 months since you've been dealing with this, right?
Yeah, I mean, my birthday was December 14th, and I'm okay, right? So.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. It's like the dog sitting in the room and the flame in the background.
Yes,
it's fine.
Everything's
it's
on fire. This is fine.
This is fine. So, what are we talking about today, TB?
Yeah, I ended a trip, went to spend some time with the guys in F3 Wichita that I had met previously in November of 03 through Grow Ruck 43.
23 to 43.
Yes.
You said 03.
A lot of threes here. A lot of threes. There's a pattern.
Yeah.
10 guys hopped in a van. I can't imagine what that smelled like on the way back to Wichita, but they found themselves down to Fort Bend, Texas. I was drawn to them just because of their camaraderie and their willingness to just throw themselves into the muck and do what needed to be done. Struck up a great conversation, which turned into an even better friendship, and had the truly honor, to fly out and spend time with them last weekend, as that region is 2 years old, going on 3 years old. While I was there, got to serve on, we'll call it a dais because it sounds fancy, with our guest today. Terry Williams is a former chaplain in the Air Force and currently serves as a pastor of a church there. I got an opportunity to sit in on Sunday as well and hear him speak. Just really moved by, we have this saying in F3 that leadership is not revolutionary, it's evolutionary. The words we read now that inspire us are all based somewhere in a line of thought processes that got us here. It just so happens that we respond to these words differently than we would have a generation ago. Terry has a way to bridge those generations and bring men together, specifically talking last week on the 4 pillars of resiliency. And I don't want to ruin the lead there, but I just thought with how our conversations have gone over the past couple years of you and I doing this, and now with our strong partnership with NGBN, that what better way to dive into this than with a couple guys from F3 and a gentleman that is F3 adjacent, we'll say. Wichita just launched their newest AO on the campus of Terry's church. So that being said, Pastor Terry Williams, thank you for being a part of Stuff Worth Trying.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun getting to meet you last weekend here in Wichita, and you guys both said, "No, I've not been to Kansas, but I've been through it." That's kind of what I hear most of the time about Kansas.
I imagine. I almost feel like there needs to be a T-shirt somewhere that says there, just passing through.
Just passing through, yeah.
So I was born in South Texas, but I've been in Wichita since '69. I love Kansas, so I love being here.
Well, I do, yeah. Now I can officially say that I do as well. I got to enjoy some barbecue, top notch. Spent some time with a couple of the F3 guys there going through All Things Barbecue, which is a show I follow on YouTube. So I felt a little starstruck standing in their aisles. But I'll kick it off this way. We have talked a few times, past episodes on this show, about a man who shows up and gives it all he has in the physical fitness realm of F3. And it's great because it naturally inspires other men. If you want to run fast, run alongside men who can run faster than you. If you want to do pull-ups, do more pull-ups. Unfortunately, there is a handful of men who get lost in the call of the podium, the gold medal and the podium, and don't really put their toe in the ocean that is the depth and breadth of fellowship and faith. You coined the phrase, at least I heard it first from you. It's not so much about being physically fit. What really matters is being physically faithful. So I would love for you to kind of set the table for us here and talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so my interest in the whole world of resiliency started back in about 2007, and the Adjutant General for the state of Kansas was, we were starting to see the outcome of the long war already, suicides and and divorce and PTSD. So he started wanting to build a resiliency program. The DOD didn't have an official one at that time. Army's was about 2008, Air Force about 2009. So he asked me there's 4 pillars, spiritual, mental, physical, relational. Army has 5, but they just split relationship into family and non-family. It's the same thing. And so he asked me to build the spiritual pillar. And there was a guy from DC. He was a general officer, a surgeon, the Surgeon General for the Air National Guard, who was going to do the physical pillar. He was a resiliency, suicide intervention, prevention expert. So got to know him, had meals with him, very gregarious guy. We built the program out, called it Flash Forward, play on words from flashback, PTSG, post-traumatic stress growth versus disorder. Rolled the program out. Shortly after that, this man killed himself. And he was the expert on suicide intervention, prevention, and all that. And it brought home, what I've always thought about. You've got information. You got to have some truth. You've got application. You got to apply the truth. You got to have ongoing motivation over time. And that leads to transformation. And motivation is internal and external, what drives you in here, but then your battle buddies. And so I started, every time I could get training on resiliency, I would get it. And just a year ago, I went to Army Master Resiliency training at Fort Riley. And there always was something missing. Like I can't put my finger on it. It's good, but I've dealt with warriors, who were resilient, good troops, combat troops, but their lives weren't together. They were falling apart. I've done way too many funerals for military members who've killed themselves. And so what was missing was this, it turned into trying to be resilient versus training for resilient. Very different construct, very different way of looking at it. If I'm trying to shoot free throws, I make or miss. I'm either proud or embarrassed. If I'm training, making and missing is all part of training. And so the idea of being physically fit, I think I used the illustration last weekend, Tommy Boy, about my friend Jim Bosch, who had cerebral palsy, stuck in a wheelchair. He was just a resilient warrior guy, and his life was just humiliating. One time I came to see him, and he'd spent the night stuck between the bed and the wall, couldn't move. That was kind of his life. I pull up to see him at the assisted care living place, and he's standing there holding a flagpole. And I went over and said, "Jimmy, what are you doing?" He said, "I'm exercising." I'm like, it looks like he's holding a flagpole. And then I look and he's sweating. His arms are shaking. And so the point of that story is nobody would call Jimmy Bosch physically fit. He would come to church and I would just pull his arm up. That was exercise because it was all his muscles locked up, but he was physically faithful. And so the same thing's true for relational fitness. I've had guys my wife just left me, had a conversation last week. He didn't have a fit marriage, but I said, okay, what can you do? What's faithfulness look like for you? Can you do this? Well, that won't change your mind. I said, I didn't ask if that changed your mind. Can you do that? And the same thing's true for mental fitness, versus mental faithfulness versus mental fitness. Can you watch for stinking thinking? Can you avoid a negativity bias? So the idea of training versus trying, faithfulness versus fitness, it's enough to carry you all the way through your life. Because if your construct doesn't work all the way through, up till your deathbed. I buried my dad in August, and he was traveled the world building pipelines. He was 92. He was out ministering to a family this summer, and a little girl showing him love, jumped on his back, took him down, broke his hip, line of duty death, Purple Heart death. And in the hospital, I'm there in the middle of the night, and I hear my dad over there, 92. This guy was John Wayne, man. He got stuff done. He's laying there in the middle of the night, and I could hear him, and I could hear, "Praise you, Father." He's in agony. I could hear, "Praise you, Father God. What do you have for me next?" That's faithfulness. See, there's no physical fitness, but he was faithful to the end. Yeah. I got a lot more stories, but that sets up the whole construct of faithfulness and training versus trying.
You hit on it a moment ago. I'd love to circle back. It's the idea that the dichotomy of control, what we can control and what we cannot control. You hinted at the story of the gentleman. I know you elaborated more last week, and I'd love for you to take the floor again on this one, because I know that an Italian Job and I just joked about it, not feeling well, and I could have very easily gone to the doctor weeks ago, months ago, but I'm just stubborn. And then here I am, woe is me. I don't feel well. This cough is really bothering me. I could have controlled that a long time ago. I could have made that choice to go. That's not to try to underscore or undermine the gentleman in your story, but talk a little bit about making the columns on the left and the right.
Yeah, I had an airman come see me one time about 20 years ago, and it's been a long time since I've heard a brand new problem. I've kind of heard them all, but this guy had all of them at once. I mean, he was about to lose his clearance, legal problems, marriage, health, everything. And, when you don't have agency, you don't have hope. And if you don't think you have agency, and that's when the guys I've talked to who are suicide ideations, they feel like they've lost all agency. And so I just drew a piece of paper, and I've done it 100 times since. Drew a piece of paper. I wrote left column, right column, not super creative. I said, okay, write down everything in the left column that you have no control over that concerns you. Turn the page over. I mean, a long list. I said, okay, write down everything in the right column you have control over. He said, I got nothing for you. I said, really, nothing? So thus his hopelessness, no agency. Mm-hmm. I like to say the left column keeps you awake at night, right column gets you up in the morning, And so he had no right column. And I say, pray in the right column, pray in the left column, live in the right column. Of course, you pray there too. So I said, let's build your right column. And so I said, can you call the judge's office and find out where your court case stands? He goes, that won't change the judge's mind. I said, the judge's mind is left column. Can you call? Okay, write it down. Can you be nice to your wife? Won't change your mind. Your wife's mind is left column. Right column can. And so he started building this meager right column, and you could see hope emerging in his eyes because he has a little bit of agency. Agency equals hope. I've used this 1,000 times since then, right column, left column. So we say around here, live in the right column, live in the right column. Pray in the left column, live in the right column. And a follow-on to that is my other kind of mantra is the best plan is the one you'll actually do. And so, everybody's got a gee whiz plan, but if you don't do it, my dad back in the 70s, when you didn't see any grown-ups running in the 70s, around town. They just, unless they were, chasing a cab or running from a bad guy. And a guy named Jim Fix came out with a book on running. And ironically, he died of a heart attack at a young age, but he died healthy at least. But he came out with that book on jogging, and my dad was sluggish and he was an exec, and so he came home one day. I remember this is back when men wore suits to work, and he worked for Koch Industries, and he came home, took off his coat and his tie, had his hard shoes on, his dress slacks, and he barely made it to the top of the block. And in about a year, he was running 5 miles. He went to Walmart and bought him some old shoes, but he didn't wait till he had the perfect plan, get the best watch, the best gear, like Forrest Gump. He just ran.
Yeah.
And the idea of that is just, we're the best plan is the one you're going to do. And that's paying attention to the right column. All the left column factors keep you stuck.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks don't realize that we have more control over than what we think. I mean, you can control your attitude. You can control your effort. You can control. You may not control how the boss feels about your promotion, but you can control how much effort you're putting in.
Exactly.
The integrity that you have, doing the hard work, putting in the hours. When the only person that knows that you're up at that hour, putting in the work and running those laps, it's you. No one else is paying attention, but you are putting in the effort to advance your physical fitness. One of the things, it's always ironic, Tommy Boy and I talk about this all the time, how frequently things that we come across during the week just happen to fall into place with the guest that we have. We rarely plan it out that way, but just this week I came across a study And that said, good relationships are the key to happiness. Just as many people are familiar with the concept of physical fitness, we should equally open the concept of social fitness. We should care for our relationships as we'd care for our body. And in this study, and the article was Why Americans Suddenly Stopped Hanging Out. And in essence, what it talked about was people started getting so invested in screens, and they stopped hanging out at the bowling alley with their friends. They stopped going to the bars with their buddies, or stopped watching the game together. And what they started doing was saying, well, I'll get my dopamine fix from the latest TikTok video or whatever it is. But what they're seeing is a degradation of social fitness. People don't know how to talk anymore. People don't know how to love anymore. And this is also at the same time that we're seeing a spike in suicides, where people feel, even though they have the technology to communicate with anybody in the world at any given moment, they feel disconnected more so than ever, even though the connectivity is right there in the palm of their hands. So you as a chaplain, as a pastor, have you seen, is the study following what you're seeing? You know, people just feel hopeless, that they don't have the connections with anyone in their community. They feel hopeless. Is that lining up with things that you have personally seen in recent years in your line of work?
Yeah, I mean, clearly. And, another one of my favorite sayings, I didn't make it up. If you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go together. And the thing about the 4 pillars is we divide them up to talk about them, but humans aren't component parts. You are a physical, mental, relational, spiritual being. And if the one pillar you don't pay attention to is going to negatively impact the others, so you don't pay attention to the social pillar. It's going to negatively start eating into the others. See it over and over. And so if I ask guys, which one you want to go without: water, food, sleep, or air? You got to have all 4. And so this lack of social faithfulness, social resiliency, it starts eating into the others, and then the others start eating into that. So, for instance, mental faithfulness, mental resiliency, harboring stinking thinking, that starts eroding our relational fitness. Martin Luther famously said, you can't keep crows from flying over your head, but you can keep them from building a nest in your hair. And you can't choose every thought that pops in your head, but you absolutely have agency on the thoughts that you let stay. And the thoughts you let stay are the thoughts that are going to shape your life. That's mental faithfulness. And so people start thinking, I don't need people. That's stinking thinking. Or this person doesn't like me. Or what I hear very often is nobody calls me. Nobody includes me. Who are you calling? Everybody tells me nobody's calling them. Well, then you call. I don't wait for people to call. And if I want to have lunch with somebody, I'm like, hey, let's go to lunch. And so the stinking thinking impacts relationships, which impacts physical, which impacts relational. F3 stumbled on a truth. All truth is God's truth. You guys have stumbled on a truth, and that is you give them a W in the fitness column, which feels like the hardest, but it's by far the easiest, by the way.
It is.
I can get up. I can get up at 5:30 every morning and go work out. No big deal. But being nice to my wife, that takes consistent effort. And I love my wife. We've been married for 41 years. But that's a win in the fitness column. I've seen this 100 times. Then they go get a win in the relational column, and then it spills over to the spiritual column, and it all starts working together. It's because we're whole beings. And that's why the DOD has 4 pillars. I don't think they love the spiritual pillar because it can be complicated. and I've got a book on constitutional challenges to the U.S. chaplaincy. So it's always been complicated, but there's no model for human thriving that doesn't include all 4 pillars, including the spiritual. So I'll tell you a story. Yeah, go ahead.
Please. Well, this might set you up because it in a good way. In F3, you talked about the pillars. In F3, we have a concept called the G3L, which is get right in order to live right so that you can lead right and ultimately leave right. And I think about, the pillars take practice. It's not like they just are there and they're always set up and they're fine. In fact, you might be feeling like the the little kid putting the finger in the dike to stop the leak sometimes, but you got to keep moving, and it takes practice. And then from the practice, develop those patterns. Another F3, it's not an F3 term, but we turned it into one, is preparedness. You want to get ready for the expected. So when the unexpected happens, you're also that muscle has been used before. In your talk last week, you talked about living left of the bang. I don't know if that was the story you were about to tell, but take it away from there.
No, it is. So in resiliency world, they talk about resiliency is prevention. It's left of the bang, and then the bang is when life happens. And then so you train left of the bang, practice in the bang, you grow right of the bang, and that's what you're getting at. And so I was going to tell a story about my daughter, and then I'll tell another one if we have time. But I mentioned this, I think I told this story the other day. I've never yet told it without tearing up. But my granddaughter Nora, she was born with a rare genetic disease. There's only about a couple hundred people in the world that have it, and her autonomic system doesn't tell her to breathe. She doesn't register carbon dioxide, and so she almost died as a baby. She spent the first summer in the hospital, and she has a diaphragm pacemaker that hooks to her phrenic nerve, carries a little backpack around, and it automatically causes her chest to move. So she can run around at school and everything. She spent her first 2 years hooked up to a trach. And then at night, she still has a trach, because if she goes to sleep, her body won't tell her to breathe and she'll die. Terrible disease. And so I went to see my daughter, Corey. I'd go see her every week. She was at Children's Mercy in Kansas City. And I took her off site to a coffee shop. We're just sitting there. What are you going to say? We're sitting there staring at the street, drinking coffee. And she said, and my daughter's works at church, spiritual lady. She's a music major in college. And she said, Dad, I can't pray. And I can't sing. And I said, Corey, it's okay, right? And she started weeping. She said, it doesn't feel okay. And I said, I watched her. You could, if you were in there with her in the hospital, you could see her lisp. She was praying, but it was, help me, Jesus, help me, Jesus, help me, Jesus. She didn't feel resilient. And she was singing. There was music in her heart. And she was making friends with nurses. She'd practiced left of the bang. She had trained left of the bang. She was practicing in the bang. And I can tell you now, years later, she's impacted the whole world, her and Nora, by post-bang growth. But when you're in the bang, when you're practicing in the bang, it doesn't feel like, it feels like you're not even surviving. And I'll follow on with a story. I was in Iraq in 2009. Chaplain, got a cross here and a cross here. And it's like, and that cross says, talk to me. And I'm like, I'm walking around this day, don't talk to me. And so I went to the top of this little stadium, like a soccer stadium Saddam had built. This was their main air base, Balad. And I laid down between two concrete bleachers. It was lunchtime. I was miserable. I was homesick. I was lonely. And people are pulling on you all the time, And I was laying there feeling sorry for myself. And I had my cap pulled over my eyes. Nobody could see me from anywhere. And I hear this breathing. And I pull up my cap, and there's a soldier sitting there staring at me. How did he find me? He may have been going up to jump off the top, honestly. And he saw me, and he saw the cross on my cap. I pull up my cap, and I said, what's up? And he started weeping. And I wish I could say, that's why I'm here, Yeah. I remember the prayer. You know what I prayed on the inside? God, give me a break. That was my prayer. Give me a break. That's how I felt. What did I do? I sat up and said, how can I help you, brother? And that soldier got help. So when you're practicing in the bang, it doesn't feel like it, but you're gonna play like you practice. That's why it's about training, not just trying.
Yeah.
Well, and then I'll tee up this, because the quote that I have written down while you were talking, and I wrote it multiple times in the ledger of your book, which, by the way, will be listed in the show notes, where guys can grab a copy of Grace and Grit. It's all about living a faithful life. But I don't want to take the quote from you, but it's the idea of where you were headed. How how we live our life and what happens in the end. So if you have a story to tie into the quote that I hope I've hinted at enough, we would love to end with that quote, because it carries with it so much opportunity and so much hope. But most importantly, it carries with it purpose. And the quote that I love from Viktor Frankl is, with the right how, you can overcome. With the right why, you can overcome almost any how.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I hope I've set the table nice enough for you to land the plane here for us.
Yeah. So my all-time favorite quote, anybody, is what matters most at the end matters most now. And the story in Psalm 90, verse 12, teach us to number our days aright, that we gain a heart of wisdom. So you're going to die. Now live today, live temporally with eternity in mind. So I was at the hospital holding one of my airman buddies' hands. His name, we called him Bear. His name was Wayne, and he was dying. And his wife was across the room asleep. She was exhausted. She'd been at his side. So just me and Bear. And I've been there many times with people in their last moment, but I'm holding Bear's hand, and he can hear me, but he can't speak. And I said, you want me to pray with you, Bear? And so he squeezed my hand. I prayed. When I said amen, literally when I said amen, breathed out his last breath. And I've thought about it many times since then. I've held my dad's hand when he took his last breath, my mom and other people. But it struck me like, Bear wasn't like, Chaplain, get my fishing boat so I can see it one more time, or, get my Air Force. He was like, the hall was lined with his battle buddies, his friends, and his family. So what he wanted was pray, relationship with God, relationship with people. And every funeral I've done, I say what matters most at the end matters most now. And what will matter most at the end, I guarantee, relationship with God, relationship with people, faithfulness. That'll matter most at the end. Is that the story you were thinking about, I hope?
100%. Yeah. That's just the power of that statement of what matters that most in the end matters now, and how we get distracted. Italian Job just hinted at it with the studies about loneliness, and not even just loneliness, just intentional isolation, which obviously is a breeding ground for loneliness. But if it matters to you that in the end there is a hallway line with your battle buddies that just want to be in your presence and near you to let you know that you are loved, then don't use the device that was invented to talk to your friends to watch YouTube videos by yourself. Pick it up, turn it on, dial the buttons, tell somebody you love them. That could change the trajectory of your life and theirs. I think that's a very powerful statement. Like I said, I've written it down probably, which is funny. I've written the same thing in your book at least a dozen times. But it carries with it weight. My kids, we have a few sayings in our house, and one of them is, don't should on yourself. I should do this. I should do that. Or don't should on others. You should lose weight. You should exercise more. Yeah. You should go to the doctor, Corey. I need to, because it matters. What matters most in the end matters now. I need to go to the doctor. I need to remind myself to tell my wife how much she is loved and that I value what she does for our family. And so
I'll give you one more verse. So when I was a young man, I would have told you these same things because I believed them. I'd heard them. But I'm an old guy now, and I've seen it. So it's not like I think this will be the case for men. I know it will be. Job 42:5, my ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. And I'm an old guy, and I'm not telling you what I think. Mm-hmm. I know this is going to sound arrogant. I'm telling you what I've seen, what I know, what I think I know. So, yeah.
Well, luckily, I know two guys on this conversation that always have a good thing to say. And Terry, I can't thank you enough, especially on a short notice, carving out time and spending it with us. This is just an important message that needs to be resonated because of the fact that there's so much of the opposite out there that's readily available for people to ingest. And if we can add one positive light to all of that, it's conversations like these. It also is no coincidence that on my screen, at least, the gentleman to your right has a great thing to say every day as well through what he's learning as he travels. So Italian Job, no pressure, my friend. But I've been following your writings this week as well. Anything you want to add to the mix before we sign off?
I don't know if I can add much more to what Terry has shared, but I live under the mantra of there's a very clear commandment: love God and love your neighbor. If you put other people before your own desires and selfish ambitions, you will find joy and happiness. If you give to others, there will be no question of, I don't know if there's anything in this world for me. Showing care, attention, and love for other people will bring nothing but joy to your heart. If you feel like you're in a dark place right now, if you feel that you are alone, I promise you, if you take a list right down the middle, just like Terry was telling us, and maybe even on one side, put the things that you're thankful for, you're going to realize there's a whole lot more on that list than you had anticipated.
Yeah.
When I walk into the office, the few times I go into the work a week, I've got about a 5-minute walk from the parking deck to the office. And in that time, it's my prayer time where I'm not distracted by my phone. I'm really, all I'm paying attention to is where I'm stepping, to make sure I'm not stepping in something on the sidewalk. But in that moment, I walk and I pray. And I think of all the things that I'm thankful for, small things. It's not just, I am very thankful for my wife and my children, but I sat in traffic for an hour and 20 minutes for a commute that should have been 30 minutes. Well, let's recalibrate our minds here. Could I be angry that I sat in traffic? Yes. But you know what else I can look at it? I have a car and I have a job that I'm driving to. I have a family that I get to provide for. I get to. There are many people in this world who would be thrilled to have the opportunity to sit in traffic, because that meant that they had a job to go to and a car to get them there. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we have to recalibrate our mind away from the things we don't have and acknowledge the things we do have. And when you acknowledge the things you do have, you'll realize how blessed you truly are. And you will find joy and you will find happiness, but more importantly, you will find joy. That's Jesus, others, and then yourself. Finding that joy. If you focus on others and the desires of others, the desires of your heart will come to fruition. Doing for others will make you find happiness and joy, will help you to find that presence in the moment, to find a reason, to find that why and that purpose. Terry, I couldn't have said, everything that you said just lines up wholeheartedly with what Tommy Boy and I talk about all the time, which is that preparation and building resiliency. And it's not just the physical. You nailed it, Terry. That's the easy part. Yeah, I can get up and throw some weights around or run or do push-ups with my buddies. That's easy. Let me tell you what's hard. What's hard is when you and your wife are having an argument and just, I don't know, humbling yourself and saying, you're right. Or, right. You know what else is hard? It's hard when you get passed for a promotion at work. It's hard when the bills are outpacing the income. That's hard. Jocko Willink would say, good. Because you know what happens when things are hard? You learn and you grow and you get better. No one ever looks back on it when they've succeeded and said, I'm glad that I succeeded. Everyone's glad they succeeded. But those who can truly look back on the scars that remind them of the hard times, those are the things you look back on and say, those were the times I was getting prepped for the other things. Building that resiliency. Right. Do the hard thing first thing in the morning so the rest of the things fall into place. I hope the hardest thing that people do today is maybe they got up and put their shoes on. Maybe somebody went for a marathon run. Who knows? Maybe the hard thing was a hard conversation at work or a hard conversation with their spouse, or, we never know what someone's going through, but kindness will go a long way. Just a smile and a kind word will go a long way. And Terry, you are the epitome of that, sharing some inside baseball knowledge with us from a perspective of, I've been there, I've done that. I'm telling you what's going to happen because I've been there. Honored, Terry. Thank you so much for joining us today. Tommy Boy.
Thanks, fellas. It's been fun.
I gotta stop talking because I won't stop. So
I won't tell you I told you so, Italian Job, but I told you so.
Yeah.
This is a good conversation. For those who are watching, Terry Williams' book is Grace and Grit. Once again, you can find it on Amazon. That link is in the show notes. If you are in the Wichita area, Terry takes care of the congregation at River Community Church. They'd love to welcome you in. I can be a personal advocate for the praise band. It was fun to sit and listen. And I grew up Methodist, so it's real fun to have a toe tapper in the middle of a church service. But that being said, Terry, to echo Italian Job, thanks so much for being our guest today. It was a true honor. I look forward to future conversations. It is in my agenda to get myself back to Wichita and be with those men, which means I can't wait to see you again and shake your hand.
Thank you. God bless you guys.
Appreciate
Amen
it.
to
Thanks,
that.
guys. Tommy
Everybody
boy,
who's out there, be good and be good at it.
it.